What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Gaming Show. My name's AJ Gels. How y'all doing? I want to start off this video by saying Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, all that good stuff. I hope you're all having, having a nice time, spending it with, friends, family, loved ones, just anyone that you really care about and whatnot. I hope you're all having, having good times and whatnot. I sort of accidentally took 3 days off when I intended to take 0 days off, but I slept all of Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, ended up going to work, coming back home from that night of work, and, sleeping all yesterday as well. So, ended up taking 3 days off that I didn't necessarily intend to. So I thought the first video back would be sort of our last news sort of related video of the year, and that's going to be my thoughts on Cyberpunk 2077, as the title says, thoughts on the game and the controversies surrounding it. It's kind of going to be not necessarily labeled a weekly show, but, kind of the last one that we're doing before the end of the year. I do want to throw out just a quick housekeeping note. I am going to be attempting to stream my thoughts on the Game Awards 2020. I know I'm super late on that, but I've been, I had a request to stream it, but just finding time and everything was difficult, and I have a couple days off, so I can actually do this tomorrow is the plan. On Monday, had to check the date, 28th. So check Twitter for times and everything, or check here on the channel, for, notifications of when I go live, and I'm going to try and figure the shit out. So, let's actually hop into things. Cyberpunk 2077, holy shit, this game has had a messy, controversial, rough, pick an adjective, and I think it kind of covers how Cyberpunk 2077 has been, I guess not necessarily positive adjectives, would probably cover the Cyberpunk 2077 launch. It has been a weird time. I'm trying not to fanboy too much, because look, I've been on the record saying I love CD Projekt Red, and in all honesty, I love this game too. I'd still score it at about an 8 right now. I'd say an 8 out of 10, because it's definitely rough around the edges. It needs some work, and I think CD Projekt Red is really trying to fix it, trying to fix a lot of that roughness, a lot of the glitchiness, a lot of the bugs, because, really, I think the max I can give this game is a 9 out of 10. Not because I don't think because I think it's really got something special about it, but I think at the end of the day, the game can't technically be a 10 out of 10 mixed with all the other problems it's had. Yes, I know the game barely functions, and that might be stretching it, on last-gen hardware and everything. I understand why people are pissed, but I think a lot of people have been saying, oh, well, it's buggy, it doesn't work on last-gen console, it barely works on current-gen consoles. That's not true. It was a little rocky when it first came out, but even then, it ran fine on my PS5. I've heard it runs fine on PC, and really, it's just getting smoother and smoother as the days go by. Really, I think Cyberpunk 27, god damn it, I've been doing that all the way to launch, and I'm still doing it. CD Projekt Red has really been pushing themselves to fix any sort of complaints, to really listen to the community, and to really fix any issues that the game has had upon this sort of tumultuous launch. About right now, the only big issue that I still have with the game is crashing. There are definitely glitches that I'll see, running around. A lot of them are just visual, stuff like cars will kind of float, or they'll merge into the ground. Some stuff like, I'll be reading a text file, exit out too quick, and the game will freeze. But all I have to do is pause, unpause, and I can move around. I've gotten out of a car sometimes, and the game won't let me sprint, because I don't know what's going on the technical level. But like I said, the game won't let me sprint. I'm just kind of stuck walking around. Again, pause, unpause, it fixes it. I know some people would say, well, I don't consider that game breaking. I can see where a lot of people would find that frustrating, annoying, and everything, but I don't consider that stuff game breaking. I think that it is annoying. I think it's frustrating in an otherwise pretty good game that it kind of holds it back. But at the end of the day, it doesn't kill it for me. There's times that I'll be sneaking around like through a vent or something, or I'll kind of land on a point up high in the corner of a building, and I think the environment will think I'm standing on some sort of slanted surface, or it'll think I don't know again what's going on there. But I end up sliding, literally just almost like I'm standing on ice out and off this ledge that I'm standing on, and it's messed up stealth scenarios. So I mean, like I said, definitely rough around the edges. There are issues with the game. Those are just some of the ones that I can think of off the top of my head on a technical level. But people are going after this game saying the storytelling shit, that this is crap, that this is crap, that this is crap, and I'm sitting here going, really? Underneath, like I said, some of the underneath the rough edges, the core game itself is actually really good. The voice acting is really fun. There's some issues with the writing here or there, but not stuff. But it's stuff that I would say is an issue in just about any sort of game like this, where you have. You have what is it? It's that sort of here are the two main here's the main dialogue choice, and then you can make all these sort of side choices. It's kind of like this is a general writing issue with me, just because it kind of annoys me. It's The Witcher did something very similar to this, where you have the dialogue that's going to advance the conversation, and then other side dialogue that I can kind of go in as I choose to sort of expand on different topics. I go through all the, the optional dialogue, and then I hit the main one, and it says, well, just get to the point. Like like the main character's trying to speed things along. Like we didn't just take 15 minutes to talk about superfluous stuff. You'll see, stuff like that, where it'll be like, wait a minute, I just took 15 minutes to talk about somewhat related topics. I mean, it's not super important stuff. And now we're talking like we didn't just talk about that for like 15 minutes. It's just, you see it in some games, kind of like Dragon Age. You see it in some games like I said, The Witcher. You saw that. It's a general thing that you see in a lot of games. I mean, that irritates me. I think there are sometimes stuff isn't 100% clear. And again, I'll kind of break down plot point by plot point, basically act one of the game in a little bit. That I think... I've kind of lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. I'm just kind of just going through just the different aspects of the game, because it's kind of weird with this one. It's there are little issues and nitpicks I have, but the core idea I still really like, and I still really like what it does. And everybody's like, well, it's shit because of all this. And I've seen people, oh, don't stop trying to defend CD Projekt Red. Oh, they are not going to give you a medal, and they're not going to like. I think CD Projekt Red deserves some slack, and I like the way they've handled all this, which we'll get into in a little bit. But no, as I was saying, I think I think the writing overall is good. Like I said, I think the voice acting is really good. I think the game looks good for the most part. Again, minus the visual glitches, but the game looks good. Yeah, it's just small stuff that, again, we'll kind of talk about as we keep going here. I know I've kind of given you all the main points, but I do want to break down each aspect individually as we go here. But you know what? I think what we'll start with, because I want to end on the happy stuff. I don't want to end on the controversies. Let's kind of talk some of the controversies that we had at the that we have with this game, and I kind of mentioned it. The fact that the game's didn't work on last-gen consoles. I'll be honest, it didn't. I've seen some of the screenshots, I've seen gameplay and whatnot, how low the frame rate's gone. I've seen some of those blobs that that are the character models. Yeah, the game just didn't work. And I get it. I know I'm lucky enough to have both next-gen hardware, both next-gen platforms. I understand that that's not a... how to put it, that what they launched wasn't acceptable. But everybody's sitting here going, oh, CD Projekt Red knowingly released a broken game. They did this, they did that. And I look at that and go, do you guys really think CD Projekt Red knew that it would look like that on base PS4? Because, I mean, I've seen people, oh, well, they didn't show us what the game would look like on base PS4. I'm like, I'm pretty sure they didn't know it would look like Play-Doh characters, moving at like 10 frames a second. I'm pretty sure they didn't think it would, I mean, obviously they knew it was going to look better on a high-end PC or PS5 or Xbox Series X. But I don't think they thought it was going to look like that. I'm like, do you guys really think the studio that gave us The Witcher and The Witcher 2 and The Witcher 3 it was going to launch something of that quality, a game that has been waited for about almost a decade now, that is so highly anticipated? You think that they were going to knowingly launch that much crap? Really? What are they, EA? I mean, I think that's ridiculous. That everybody thinks, oh, well, that was intentional. That they just decided to throw it out there onto the market. I'm like, I don't think they would think that when it got into the wild, it would be that bad. Again, that's a theory of mine, but I don't know. Something just doesn't add up to me. That they're just like, oh, well, we know it's unplayable. Well, let's launch it anyways. No, I don't think. I mean, I think fan pressure to launch the game definitely had something to do with the state that the game launched in, but I don't think they expected to have the litany of issues that they did. I think they expected to have normal launch issues, not what happened. And like I said, I will say some of it does go to CD Projekt Red for, I think, launching a game that was probably unfinished. And I did mention, I think fan pressure was a very big issue to this, because I was even, I will admit that I would have gotten mad at another delay, that I would have sat here, whined, throw my tantrum, and I don't think they would have deserved it, especially if they could have fixed some of this stuff and had a much smoother launch. But I do feel for CD Projekt Red. I mean, the launch of this game all year has just been a gigantic clusterfuck, not caused by them. I mean, the game was originally supposed to come out in early February, or no, late February. Yeah, it was supposed to be around the 22nd, I think. It was supposed to be around my birthday. Game was originally supposed to be out in February. They push it back to, I think, around May. I think that was the first delay. I think there was only one delay at first. I think, yeah, it was pushed back to May, around the same time that The Witcher came out in 2015. So they push it back to May. Okay, normal delay stuff. And it's, I don't think a lot of people were super surprised that it happened. Okay, so we have to wait a little longer. It's going to be around the time that The Last of Us Part 2 comes out. So, we wait and wait and wait. What happens, a few months into the year? Boom, coronavirus explodes out. It's this now big global pandemic. Everyone's trying to figure out what's going on. Game companies, everyone's delaying everything. Everyone's trying to figure out how they're working from home and everything. And that pushes Cyberpunk 2077 back to, I want to say, August or September at this point. We start rolling up, I think, about 60, I think it might have been 90 days out. We got another delay. Pushed it back to November. All right, so again, everybody's going, son of a bitch, we wanted the game, blah, 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 but whatever, fine, we'll wait till November. Of course, that's also when Sony and Xbox decide we're going to stop playing our little game of chicken about the next-gen hardware and its prices, and then they flub those launches by saying, hey, you can pre-order them now, go, 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 and everybody floods on the internet and everything starts crashing in that shitty period of time. Not going to lie, I had plenty of anxiety attacks trying to get my consoles ordered. That was fun. So, and then, both of those, I'm pretty sure that CD Projekt was thinking that they were going to be able to beat the next-gen hardware launch. Well, okay, now we're coming out after the next-gen hardware launch. Okay, so now we have to delay it again, in my opinion, to make sure that it's optimized and will run on the next-gen hardware on high levels, because, like I said, they were probably expecting to beat them, and then they could patch it a little bit beforehand and tinker with it a little bit before the launch of the next gen. Well, now we have to take time to do all this stuff and make sure it runs on all these consoles that are going to be actually out before launch, and then they push it back to the start of December, and then everything is history as we know it. So it's like I said, I think that they just got dealt the worst fucking hand. Like I said, I think they probably should have delayed it one more time. If we're, hindsight being 2020, like I said, I can say that all calm now, and I'll admit I probably would have been pissed off if they would have delayed it one more time. But I think that's probably what they needed to do for this game to really function and really work as it should, and maybe get the... Yeah, and I don't want to say get fair reviews, but I think get reviews that I think more reflect what the game is, in my opinion. And I know I might be arguing semantics, but I think so much around this game, so much of the thought is around just the problems that have been going on at launch, not what's being fixed, not where the game state is currently, which I guess you can make the argument, well, you have to review it at launch, and with all these bugs, I'm like, yeah, but I think that review needs an asterisk, and it's a whole sort of chicken and the egg thing. But yeah, I think CD Projekt Red really, they had a hard time getting this game out, and I don't envy them. I mean, I know you can argue that other companies have had games that haven't been this broken, but it's just, you can kind of you can kind of see the cause of a lot of the different delays that have been going on, and just me personally, I feel a little bad for this company. I know so many people are like, oh, well, they're a multi-million dollar, massive company and all this. I've seen people, like, oh, well, I've seen people say like, oh, Rockstar launched GTA 5 and that game's been on multiple platforms and all this stuff, and oh, it's not had all these issues and all that. Yet even then, GTA 5 and Cyberpunk 2077 are vastly different games. I think so many people see, oh, they're both shooters. I'm like, okay, well, I mean, they're still vastly different for this open world first person RPG and a very much just more open world action game. Very, very different types of games, if you ask me. But whatever. And also, I mean, it's worth mentioning, yeah, I mean, CD Projekt Red is a big company now after The Witcher 3, I mean, but it's only been, like I said, 5 years after that since they've expanded and really start to become this massive player. Until then, I'm not going to say that they were a small little indie developer, but they are an independent, pretty much one studio, I think now 2 studio, even though you can argue that it's their main studio and a satellite studio, all still in Poland. There's still a small-ish studio that's really fairly independent of any major publisher. But yeah, again, you want to tell me I'm making excuses? I'm just kind of beating a dead horse here at this point. I think that to sit here and say they fucked up and they're to blame and they're trying to gyp everyone, I think is way oversimplifying what happened with this launch. And then even let's look at what happened after launch. 2 days after launch, CD Projekt Red's already releasing a statement saying, yeah, look, this is fucked up. We're sorry. We're fixing it. We're working on it and everything like that. How many companies would have come out that fast, and B, been that conciliatory? And then after that, they're even talking about doing refunds. They're talking, because everybody starts going off, oh, okay, we want refunds. Okay, they're like, okay, we'll work with Sony. We'll work with Xbox. And eventually they had to, pull the Sony thing from that statement. Everybody's like, oh, so now Sony people aren't going to be able to get refunds. Everybody starts getting mad. A day later, Sony announces, yes, we're working with CD Projekt Red to give you refunds. Oh, okay, there we go. Refunds are happening on both major platforms. Hell, CD Projekt Red's working with physical retailers to give refunds for the game. I am laughing my ass off. I've seen reports of people getting mad. They're like, well, I want a refund of the game, but I also want to keep my copy. What? That is the dumbest thing ever. Like, they think that they can get their money. Basically, they want a free game. Like, that's fucking... Like, no, if the game's as shit as you say, no, wait and rebuy it when you think it's better. Or whatever. That's a really shitty thing. But no, I mean, like I said, I think CD Projekt Red has handled this about as well as you can, saying, we hear you, we're trying to fix it, and they have. They've released a shitload of patches already. And like I said, the game is getting smoother and smoother as we go. I will throw that out there. And it's just, at every turn, they have tried to fix things. And then I think the last really big piece of news that I haven't heard a lot about is the fact, that CD Projekt Red stock was crashing, and that a lot of their investors in both the US and Poland are contemplating lawsuits, over, oh, well, they knowingly released the game in a broken state. I'm like, again, I really highly doubt they were going to sabotage this game with this many eyes on it, that they were going to sabotage this game. No, fuck no. I don't think that they were knowingly launching this game in a broken state. I've seen people say, oh, well, they released it with a really shitty broken AI. And I'm like, really? I think the AI is on par with a lot of other open world games of this nature. Again, I'll talk more about that stuff as we get into the actual gameplay and everything. But yeah, as far as the controversies go, I think, yes, CD Projekt Red deserves criticism. I don't think they deserve what they gotten to this extent, if that makes sense. Long story short, I think that's the best way to put it. It's just, I don't think they deserve it to this extent. I definitely think they screwed up. And I think, like I said, they've done everything to make it right. I think they're doing as much as they can to make things right. And I really do think at the end of the day, when all the smoke clears, I mean, hell, I think you can see this. CD Projekt Red has released the numbers of sales for this game, and have said, I'm not gonna say I'm not gonna say a number because I can't remember off the top of my head. But I mean, the game's done very well sales wise, and that's even taking out all the refunds. Supposedly, I think it's still something. I'm gonna make a guess here. I want to say it was upwards of 13 million. I think was opening day. Well, it was launch sales, and again, that is taking into account refunds. That is removing refunds. That's still people who have copies that didn't request refunds are still upwards of 13 million, and that's of the game being out for what, 2 weeks now. I mean, really, I do think at the end of the day, when CD Projekt Red has fixed everything, it's not going to be a 10 out of 10. It's not going to be the Witcher 3 situation where this redefines RPGs and everything. But I definitely think this game is going to be talked about and liked. But I think this whole situation is not going to be forgotten, and I think this whole situation, I don't want to say, oh, it's sullied CD Projekt Red's name, but I think it's really hurt them in terms of fan. Is approval the right way to say it? I think it's definitely hurt them in the eyes of the fans and everything. So we'll see what they do moving on. Hopefully they'll make some kick-ass DLC expansions, and like I said, I really do think that they'll fix everything and everything will get running to the point where this game really could be remembered fondly. So that's my take on all the controversies and whatnot. So I kind of talked about this in reverse order of what I was planning, but when do I ever do things exactly as I plan? So I'm gonna go grab a bottle of water real quick. I'll be back after a quick cut, and we'll talk about the game itself. There we go. I didn't get a bottle of water, but I got a Mountain Dew Code Red. I'm sure there's water in there, and anybody who wants to talk shit about me drinking a Mountain Dew Code Red is awesome. So there you go. All right, on to the main point. Now I'm done talking about soda. Let's talk about the actual game of Cyberpunk 2077. Where to start? Let's just kind of start at the very beginning. By the way, there will be spoilers for the narrative and all that, and what I've seen either off camera or on camera, and whatnot. So like I said, I'm not going to hold anything back. Full story and quest spoilers and whatnot. So I just want to throw that one out there. So let's start really where the game starts. Character creator. I was thinking this was going to be the most interesting thing about this game, specifically because usually I don't put a lot of thought into my character, into my character creator, because I especially in first person games, because what's it really matter? But I like the fact that you see V, our main character, in reflections, that you see them when you're out driving and everything. I don't know. It's just, this is the first time that I've ever really cared about the style and look of my character. Even in a first-person game where I don't really see my character a lot, because really there aren't cutscenes, there aren't a lot of moments. You see everything from a first-person perspective. I've also seen a sex scene or two. Again, first-person perspective. It's actually kind of interesting. that they would make such a bold choice. Obviously, look, we can't talk the character creator in this game without talking about the big funny bit, which is customizable genitals, which are a thing in this game. Really funny. You can choose breast size, penis size. Hell, you can. We're all adults here. I can say this. You can choose whether you're circumcised or not. Look, there's not as much free. There's not as much. What's the term? As much customization there as I was really hoping. I was hoping it would give me like sliders on like so many different qualities, but for the most part, it's goofy, it's fun. I like that they put it there. Or you can have genitals turned completely off. You can mix and match genitals as you see. It's funny. It's a goofy thing, but it's an interesting thing thrown into a character creator that fits not only. I'm trying to think how to put this. That fits not only the fun of a character creator that you can kind of make whatever you want, but also fits the world of Cyberpunk 2077 with everybody being basically a cyborg, and has all these cybernetic enhancements. Really, I mean, that's people having all these different genitals and all this crazy shit. That's kind of a thing. I mean, hell, one of my favorite side quests that I got in Cyberpunk was where you help a guy who has a burning crotch because his penis implant is malfunctioning, which also I love, which is actually a real implant in the tabletop game, by the way. In the implant's called Mr. Stud. I've always liked that. But no, all in all, the character creator, it works. Plenty of hairstyles, plenty. You can do a lot of different customizations with your characters and everything. Lots of details and everything. I wish tattoos were more. I can kind of pick placements, and there was more options there, kind of like the cyberware lines, on your character. I wish those were also a little bit more customizable, but all in all, this is one of the few times that I've actually enjoyed hanging out in a character customizer. Usually I'm not as big a fan, but this one, it's got plenty of options. You can really make the character that you want to make. I definitely approve of this character customizer. As far as difficulty goes, it's your simple, your basic difficulty. Easy, medium, hard, super hard sort of things. Personally, I wish that the difficulty level that you picked would also limit, or it would either give you more or less starting attribute points when you go into your skills and everything. Similar to how a tabletop works. Your dungeon master basically picks how strong you're going to be at the very start of the game. At least in certain RPGs. I think that would have been really cool. Like, if you pick an easier difficulty, you get more starting attribute points. If you pick a harder difficulty, you start weaker. I think that would have been interesting, but I get why they didn't do it. But still, that would have been cool. So then you move on after you select what you want your character to look like. You move on to attributes, there are 5 main attributes in the game. There might be a 6th that unlocks down the road, because when I'm in the game and I'm in the character bit of the menu, there's a sixth slot where it looks like there should be another attribute that every time I scan over it, it looks like the game glitches. And when I say glitches, I have to say, because you're looking at it through kind of like how to put it, as it glitches, as in it is a visual aesthetic in the game, not like a glitch, if that makes sense. It's there because it's supposed to look like that. There we go. Because it's kind of weird, because a lot of the tech is kind of supposed to sometimes look like it glitches and everything. I don't know. I'll try and make it very clear when I'm saying it's a glitch, as in it's an issue, or a glitch as in it's a visual aesthetic choice. So that's what I mean when I'm saying, you dig around the character menu. It looks like there might be a 6th attribute that unlocks later, but at the very start of the game, there's 5 attributes. You have body, which is your physical strength and endurance; reflexes, which, again, self-explanatory; tech, which is your ability to craft and whatnot; cool, which in the tabletop is more your, because I think a lot of people think when they think cool, they think just as, they think of it as a charisma stat, but actually in the tabletop, I believe charisma and cool are two separate stats. Cool is more keeping your cool. It's how level-headed you are under fire. In 2077, the video game, cool is more your stealth. It's more your, I don't want to say stealth stat, but it's where your, cool is just one of the more ambiguous, is probably the most ambiguous attribute in this game, because there are some dialogue options that you need cool for, so it's kind of your charisma, but really checks don't work that way in this game. And again, I'll talk more about that as we go. It's interesting how they do dialogue checks and whatnot, but I'll talk about that in a little bit. So cool is kind of is where your stealth perks are. It's where your sort of charisma option is. It's hard to explain exactly what cool is in this game. And then finally you have intelligence, which governs hacking. So so at the very start, I think each attribute, from what I remember, is set at 3, and you can upgrade them up to 6 at the very beginning of the game. With all your beginning attribute points. It says here's how many attribute points that you can, distribute at the start of the game. You can have up to 6 or 7, and you start at 3. And the very max in the game is 20. So on each level up, you get an attribute point and you get a perk point. Because there's kind of, in the attribute/skill system, there's sort of 3 levels of skills, and they all act somewhat independently. It's a very interesting skill system that took me a little bit to kind of get used to and figure out how exactly it works. So you kind of have to work with it and kind of get used to it. I think the best way to put it with this game, because I've seen people say, oh, there's not a lot of role playing opportunities with this game. I think there's about as much role playing as much as you're willing to put the effort into role playing in this game, which I think you can play it as a straightforward action first person open world game, or you can play it as a full-blown RPG. It's just you have to kind of be willing to put in that work to figure out how the crafting, well, not necessarily the crafting. The crafting's actually a pretty simple system, but whatever. But how the skill system and how everything works to kind of craft your character and how to role play in the dialogue and everything. It doesn't do it in a very traditional sense. You kind of have to figure out what they're shooting for. It's a little weird, but like I said, once you really figure it out, I think it's pretty satisfying. But as I mentioned, you have the 5 base attributes that are all governed by attribute points, have a max of 20. And whatnot, and as you level up in your different attributes, you get access to more perks. Perks are, think of them more as passive skills, yet in hacking, they're kind of active skills. Again, this is what I mean by everything's kind of separate when it comes to this attribute system. It's really, it's kind of interesting. Excuse me. So each individual perk, there's a separate perk tree. Again, this is hard to talk about because I want to talk about perks, but I think it's better to talk about what I call the skills. So you have the 5 main attributes. You have body, reflex, tech, cool, and intelligence. And each one of those has 2 or 3 corresponding skills. For body, it's athletics, demolition, and what's the third one? Athletics, demolition, and street brawling. Athletics is running, jumping, and whatnot. Demolition is shotguns, explosives, stuff like that. And, well, maybe not explosives, because explosives is also handled by tech. But I know you get a lot of shotgun perks in demolition. And street brawling is punching and blunt weapons. All 3 of these skills are not boosted by skill points or attribute points or anything. You literally get them by doing them. The way you get better at demolition, shoot more shotguns. The way you get better at athletics, get complete body checks out in the real world. You do body checks by some are in dialogue. You need a certain level of body to be physically intimidating in conversation, or you need a certain level of body or physical strength to pry open a door. You get athletics by running, jumping, completing those checks. That's how you get athletics. Shotgun demolition, like I said, shoot shotguns and stuff. Street brawling, fight and punch and whatnot. So that's where you get levels in the individual skills. In reflex, it's handgun, which covers handguns and revolvers. Assault, which covers SMGs and assault rifles. I think, where's sniper rifles? I'm trying to remember where sniper rifles fit. I can't remember if sniper rifles fit into assault or demolition. I need to play with sniper rifles a little bit more. I haven't done that a lot in the game just yet. What's the third reflex? Blades, which is knives and katanas. So again, you get better at each of those by using pistols and revolvers, assault rifles and submachine guns, and bladed weapons all independently. Under tech, you have crafting and engineering. Engineering covers consumables and grenades, and crafting is pretty self-explanatory. Under intelligence, you have breach protocol and quick hacking. Breach protocol is what you get through completing the basic little hacking minigame. And quick hacking is also kind of what it sounds like. You get it by completing quick hacks, which hacking in this game is really interesting because I figured you would have to find stealth in, find computers and access points and whatnot. No, kind of like the RPG, or, you'd be in a net running chair or whatever, the tabletop. No, what quick hacking is, or what hacking is in this game is it's a much more, I don't want to say an active process, but it's a much quicker process. It's a much more, I'd say a little bit more practical. When you're a hacker in this game, you kind of have to think of V less as, I want to play a netrunner. You're not really a netrunner. You're a solo, as in you're a combat mercenary who fights through hacking. Your hacks are basically weapons that you use out in the world. You have an access to a scanner, which kind of slows down time. It shows you, you can see cameras, you can see hackable objects, or you can, target an individual and you have a list of quick hacks. So, you can equip some that are like, you mess with their optics, so you blind them for a second. You can completely shut them down. You can kill them. You can shock them. You can overheat them. You can do so many different things with quick hacks, and you gain quick hack experience by launching quick hacks. Or there's a free hack called Breach Protocol. Excuse me. What Breach Protocol does, it lowers the cost of each quick hack by 1 unit, which I'll talk about that in a second. Well, you know what? Let's talk about it now. The way, and I know I'm kind of jumping around here, but again, there's so many things to talk about and how everything kind of interconnects. It's really interesting when you really start to see how everything works in this game. So with hacking, you have a piece of cybernetics in the game called a cyberdeck, which will give you slots, buffer space, and RAM. Slots are the different equipable quick hacks that you can find through the game. You can buy them at shops, or you can find them through completing hacks and whatnot. So there are different hacks, like I said, like reboot optics, system reboot, synaptic shock, which is one of my favorites, which does more damage based on how much damage you do. So you can, if you can time it right, you can shoot somebody. It won't take them down, but then the shock will happen, and so it'll, you can hit them with a silenced weapon, and then the shock happens. It's kind of a cool little combo that you can do to take out stronger enemies. So that's quick hacking, and then, like I said, each quick hack costs a certain amount of RAM. That's how much how many quick hacks you can do at a certain time before you have to recharge RAM. It recharges faster outside of combat than it does inside of combat. Your total amount of RAM is figured by your cyber deck, as well as your intelligence level and other perks that you can get, which again, I will talk about perks in a second as soon as I'm done talking about skills. So that's basically the quick idea of quick hacking. That's slots and RAMs. And then I also mentioned that each cyber deck has a buffer size. So there's a small hacking mini game where it's basically you'll see lines filled with alphanumerical couplings, I guess is the best way to put it. So you'll see like 1C, 5, D4 or whatever. You'll see, just lines of these, couplings of numbers and letters. So basically starting on the top row, you can pick any in the top row. You can make a selection, then you have that vertical column that you can make a selection in. So, you pick 1C, 7A, E9. I think those are 3 typical things that you'll see in there. And then on the right side of the screen, you'll see, Ice Pick Demon or this demon. So basically, it's all these different effects that you can cause through what's known as breach protocol. It's kind of like hacking into somebody's system. So Ice Pick will lower the amount of RAM that it takes to do a quick hack. Sometimes you can cause mass vulnerability, which will make their physical resistance drop. That'll make that'll do other things. So that's what breach protocol is. It's basically hacking into systems. I know I can sit and probably talk about this system in much more depth, but I'm trying to keep things focused and moving. Go check out the LPs. You'll see what I mean by breach protocol. It's kind of interesting. So that's those are the 2 skills under intelligence. You have breach protocol and quick hacking, and then the final two skills that are governed by the cool attribute are stealth. This is what I meant by stealth is technically governed by cool, and your cold-heartedness or cold-blooded. That's what it's called. And see, this is where things get kind of interesting with the skill system, because the skills act almost independently of your attributes. And what I mean by that is I can play a character that's got very low reflex, but that has low overall reflex, but my overall blade score is very high because the individual skills level separately to your attributes. They don't have a max point based on attribute. Each skill can level up 20 times. And at each level of an individual skill, you'll either get a free perk point, maybe blades will be faster, or you can reload faster, or you can do you'll get a passive buff for upgrading that skill. So even if, say, it doesn't fit into your build, like you're not going to play like a high-tech character. Well, still, there's a perk in the tech tree. It's under crafting, where it automatically disassembles junk that you find in the game. Like you'll pick up an ashtray and it'll just automatically disassemble it into crafting materials for you. Okay. Well, that boosts your crafting skill. Getting that perk early on in the game actually doesn't hurt no matter what build you play, because getting that perk early always bumps up your crafting. Cold-blooded is a similar skill. There's a perk under cold-blooded where you pick up the cold-blooded perk, the main perk that you get at the very beginning, and it lets you pick up stacks of cold-blooded, and then each stack on its own isn't very interesting, but as you delve further into the cold-blooded perk tree, you can get faster movement, you can get better reload, you can get better this thing for kills with cold-blooded. It's kind of interesting. Like, you kind of have to get the perk to start boosting the skills. God damn it, man, this skill system, it's weird. It took me a little bit, because if it's starting to sound really confusing, that's kind of how I was when I first started diving into this perk system. I'm like, wait a minute, so skills are independent of their main attribute. Well, then why are they there? And why are the perk, because each individual skill has a perk tree, and why are the perk trees based on the base attribute? So, as you boost intelligence, as you boost cool, as you boost tech, reflexes, and body, you get access to more perks in the corresponding skills, but the skill level doesn't, but you can have a low skill level, but still have access to most of the perk tree. It's a really weird concept, but as you kind of figure out how everything kind of flows together, it starts making more and more sense. It's a really unique system. And I haven't really explained what perks are, but perks are probably the simplest things. They're basically passive skills. Each tree acts just a little differently, but you pick up skills in them that, it's like I said, some are auto crafting, some will reduce stamina cost when swinging a melee weapon, some will give you new quick hacks, some will give you this. They're basically passive buffs, and everything. It's a really interesting skill system that this game has. It's really kind of goofy when you get into things. Seeing that I've kind of talked about gameplay a little bit, let's just get this kind of out of the way. Gameplay is your generic kind of first-person open world action game. Personally, this is one of the few games that I like playing with the targeting reticle in the middle of the screen off. One of the few games that I actually enjoy that. But the weapons feel good. I hear that there's a talking gun that, has like an AI in it and will talk to you. I really want to get that gun. But, there are different types of firearm itself. There's power, which is just your typical ballistic type guns. You have smart weapons, which kind of track targets, and tech weapons, which you can charge and basically shoot through cover. Each have their own kind of interesting sort of feel to them. Personally, I prefer just power ballistic weapons because I think they pack the most punch and whatnot. But I think I'd like to pal around, kind of mess around with the other ones. I just have to do that more in my own time. Just like enemy characters have resistances and everything. I just really haven't played around a lot with that either. But they're interesting. Stealth in the game is very much based on level and damage and everything. Because you can mod your weapons. You can put sights on them, you can put silencers, and you can put actual mods that increase damage, increase load time. There's other mods and whatnot, but you can put a silencer on most any weapon, but you do have to note that silencers do reduce damage, do reduce your overall damage, so you have to take that into consideration. So, honestly, one of my favorite things to do, I love putting a silencer on a big fuck-off revolver, so you can just go up to somebody and blow their head off. I mean, literally, like, you see their head chunk. Like, sometimes the head blows off completely, sometimes it just blows off a chunk of their head. It's really gross. But also, let's be honest, kind of awesome. So, you can do stealth that way. You can do stealth with bladed weapons and get critical sneak attacks. Or you can just go up, hit square, and I'm speaking this out of a PS5 controller, hit square behind an enemy, and you'll grab them. If they're a high-level enemy, they'll break free quicker. They will break free. You can choose whether or not to do a lethal takedown or a non-lethal takedown. You can hide bodies in dumpsters and whatnot, very Hitman-esque, except you can actually drag people over while you're holding them, by the neck. You can hit, you can choose your kind of takedown, and they'll kill or, knock them out and then hide the body all in one motion, which it's just a nice quality of life thing. But yeah, stealth and combat and everything, it's very RPG, very first-person shooter-like. It works, it's fun. I like like I said, the hacking system wasn't what I expected, but now as I'm kind of figuring it out, again, kind of like the skill system, I'm like, oh, this is really interesting. It's actually a lot of fun. And just like I said, there was a bit of a learning curve to those, because they weren't necessarily what I was expecting. Anything else to really kind of talk about? Like, what? Like I said, before we talk about the story, let's talk about the way dialogue in this game works. Because I mentioned how this game doesn't really have a traditional kind of like check system, where usually you put points into charisma and then you have to choose whether or not that, it kind of like Fallout, kind of like other games, you have a charisma system, and if you want to lie to somebody or you want to try and bluff them, you want to try and do whatever, you have to pass basically a charisma roll. This game doesn't do that. This game has dialogue options given to you that are locked unless you have a certain level of body to intimidate somebody, reflexes to notice something, intelligence to understand something, a tech skill to understand the inner workings of something. So you actually, if you pass the check, you'll just see the number and the symbol of the attribute to complete the check. If not, it'll say, 7 out of 8. So okay, so I'm one less, and I'm not able to complete this check. Depending on the life path that you choose at the beginning of the game, I forgot to mention this in Character Creator. You have a different life path. You can be a corpo, a street kid, or a nomad at the start of the game, and that kind of has different dialogue options. I mean, it's pretty simple. It pretty much, as far as I can tell, only affects the prologue and, like I said, just general dialogue options. But it's kind of interesting how these different life paths give you different options in certain dialogue. It's not always clear when you're trying to fool somebody, if you're trying to talk, I feel like a lot of games, when you're like, okay, here's the charisma path of this conversation, I can bypass a lot of stuff. In this game, it's more you have to work the dialogue options as they're given. Because a lot of times, you don't even need to have a high skill, or you need to have a certain background. Yeah, those help. But sometimes you can get through just by paying. Sometimes you can get through by just doing this or that. Like, you actually have to think of the dialogue options you're picking. Like I said earlier, it's very much like The Witcher, where you have the certain main dialogue paths and then just certain side questions that you can ask. There's some weird stuff there that I wish that that people who write games like this would stop doing. Like I said, for example, it's, I go through all of the side dialogue and get all the details, and then they're like, well, just cut to the chase. And I'm like, well, you shouldn't have I asked about all the side stuff. Why is my character now saying cut to the chase? That's just there's a disconnect there. But that's a lot of games, not just this one. So yeah, dialogue's interesting. I mentioned that the voice performances are actually really on par in this game. I really enjoy. Honestly, this is the first time that I have a male-female character that I like both characters just as much. I think they both stand out in different scenes. Like, there's some really emotional scenes that I think the female character, the female VO, whatever, just absolutely nails. Then, I mean, the male character does fine, but she nails, and vice versa. So it's really well done. That it's got a fun cast of characters. Some not as absolutely insane as I thought they would. This is weird because I know I was talking about the dialogue in the game. Dialogue is, like I said, it's interesting. It's probably not what I think a lot of people were expecting a more RPG-like system in this game. I know I'm bouncing back and forth between characters and everything because there's a few things I want to say, but I think that it can best be summarized like this. I think people were expecting a full-blown Dragon Age or a full-blown Fallout or whatever, where your character is a blank slate. That is not the case. V is a character. V is a character kind of like Geralt is a character, where you don't have, as, like I said, like a free range to make the character you want necessarily. I mean, yes, you can change it with build, you can choose tone, you can choose, do you want to be overly aggressive, do you want to be more sly and manipulative? But at the end of the day, in my commentated LP, I said I wanted to play a very unfeeling, very cold-hearted, almost a psychopath. V will still be kind of warm and kind with a lot of characters, because that is V's character. He has these relationships in this game and everything. So, yeah, maybe I would have liked to have a little bit more bearing on what kind of character I am. But we have to remember, at the end of the day, in this game, I think a lot of people, like I said, were expecting more of a blank slate that they can make into who they want. Instead, V is already a person in this world. V is a character, and we're kind of making the more minute adjustments, similar to what we did with Geralt in The Witcher 3. I think that's the best way to put it in this game, in terms of V and how dialogue and everything works. So I think now I can move on to the one other character I really wanted to talk about. Like I said, the characters in this game are really fun. They're good. But one of the characters that I actually find probably the most interesting is Johnny Silverhand, the character played by Keanu Reeves. And I've seen people like, Keanu Reeves deserves to be in a better video game, and I think he knocked out of the park in this one. And I say that as not really a big Keanu Reeves fan. I mean, I've got nothing against him. I enjoyed The Matrix, but I'm not a massive Keanu Reeves fan. But he killed it, and I think the game actually does some really interesting things with him, because I knew he's connected to the biochip that you get very early on in the game, and he appears kind of like a ghost in this game. And you see very early on when the character first meets Johnny that Johnny can almost control V. He's slowly taking over V throughout the entire game. It's really interesting. And even to the part where I've gotten where he's kind of being conciliatory. He's kind of being a, you know what, let's work together. Let's find my original engram. Let's try and make it so you're not dying, because that's the whole crux of the game after the opening act. V's dying. That's the whole thing of the game. But yeah, Johnny Silverhand, I think initially I was thinking, because everyone's, he's this rocker boy, he's this big rock star, he's this anarchist, he's, you're seeing all these, visions of him. I was thinking it was going to be more Joker to Batman and Arkham Knight, where Joker was just there fucking with him the whole time. Johnny's not the character I thought he was going to be, because Johnny, to me, is very much a pulled back character, which also, if you're going to play a very kind of crazy character, why would you get Keanu Reeves? He's very good at that very kind of stoic, very kind of flat kind of character, but it actually really worked with what they were doing with Johnny in this game. It took me a while to appreciate it, but Johnny isn't necessarily a crazy rock star. I mean, yeah, he's got his stories of, his crazy time as a rock star, but the character of Johnny that we see is very much a person who's fed up with the world. If anything, he's apathetic. He's just kind of fuck it all, burn it down, I don't care. Kind of a grumpy old man, in a weird way. He's definitely got the anarchistic streak in him. If you hear him talk about the world, but again, it comes across more as old man living in the hills with a shotgun, not trusting the government kind of way than your crazy anarchist, burn it all down kind of punk rock band kind of character, which is what I was expecting more out of him. But no, he's very, very reserved, very kind of laid back in his disdain for everything. There's this really cool scene where you start a side quest where you're looking for these bootleg copies of samurai shows that they played back in their old days, and Johnny's kind of ghost takes you to this, what used to be a club that they played in, but it's now a food shop. And you hear Johnny's like, this is why you never bring back dead soldiers. The monuments they fought for all end up changed and whatnot. It's a really kind of solemn scene in a weird way that Johnny kind of plays off with his kind of dry sarcasm, but you can kind of tell he's annoyed that, I kind of was fighting for this sort of freedom from the corpse and this sort of, sense of individuality, and it just all gets torn down. It's why you don't bring dead soldiers back. It was a really interesting line. He even talks about, because at the very end of the quest, you meet this old school rock and roll fan who's, has these bootlegs and whatnot. And Johnny says something really interesting, because you'd think that he'd like this guy who's very much into the old ways and the older music of the 2020s, which is oddly where we are now. But, that's the 2020s is where the RPG is set. Which I haven't really mentioned. This game plays with the concept of the 2020s, and the way the fact that that Cyberpunk 2077 was kind of the futuristic view of the 80s, and this one is very much more of the kind of the 90s, early 2000s view. It's kind of interesting how they how they've moved from where the tabletop was set into where Cyberpunk 2077 is set. Kind of similar to how the Witcher video games take place really after the book series, how they continue the story. It's just kind of a interesting thing that I wanted to throw out there. Back to what I was talking about with this quest. But no, Johnny starts listening to this old guy who really enjoys the music and everything. But Johnny doesn't go, well, he's, a fan and he's all this. He doesn't take solace or happiness out of this. He still approaches it with this kind of dry cynicism of, look at this guy stuck back in the 2020s with the hair, the clothes, all this. He knows every word to every song, but he doesn't understand them. He doesn't understand what it means. That's my shitty Keanu Reeves impression. But it's this really kind of solipsistic, depressed way of, I was fighting for something, but nobody understood what I was fighting for. It was really interesting. He's a very unique character. It took me a little bit to appreciate him, but I do really like Keanu Reeves' performance. All right, so a final thing I really want to talk about. I want to talk about the story and kind of go over how the game starts and kind of moves along, and kind of my opinions of some of that. I'll kind of only go up to the very beginning of Act 2, which really shouldn't take too terribly long. I'll try not to go into too much detail, but either way, game opens in the prologue, which is your opening, which is whatever backstory you choose. If you're a corpo, you're working at Arasaka, you're beginning your boss basically wants you to do a hit or, you know, take down another competitor, basically just corporate backbiting shit. You get found out, your accounts get drained and everything. You meet the great Jackie Wells, who actually might be one of my favorite characters. Sadly, he dies at the end of Act 1. Love Jackie Wells. You know, he was all over the advertising for the game too. It's surprising he dies that early, but they don't just like off him. They give him a good send off. Is a really nice scene. But yeah, so Jackie's kind of your key to the streets, sort of. That's the kind of how they, you know, he's his V's line to the streets, as V's the corpo and everything. Basically, this plot gets found out. V's accounts get drained. He gets fired, basically, and him and Jackie team up to go be this, you know, kind of street mercenary duo. Under the street kid life path, you start off in the bar that actually Jackie's mom owns. You know, you're a kid who was born in the area. Apparently you moved to Atlanta for a period of time, but came back. You know, you end up getting wrapped up into this job where you're going to go steal a car. You show up to the car, you hack into it. Jackie ends up showing up, putting a gun to you. You know, you two kind of end up fighting. The job kind of goes sideways. The cops get called, and you and Jackie get arrested. The cop, you know, the guy who owns the car basically says to kill you and Jackie. The cops decide, nah, we're not, really, it's not worth it. So, you know, you and Jackie become best friends, team up, and that's where it leads up into Act 1. And then the final prologue is the Nomad, where you start outside of the, where you start outside of Night City, out in the Badlands. You've kind of left your Nomad clan for some reason I haven't seen yet. So you leave your clan. You're doing this random job, and you meet Jackie as you're trying to smuggle something into Night City. You begin the smuggling run. At the end, you find out that what you were smuggling was something. What were you smuggling? You were smuggling like an iguana or something. It was really kind of funny. And again, you and Jackie become fast friends, and, you know, again, leads you into the opening of Act 1, because it basically ends up with it's kind of how Jackie and V kind of team up and begin their kind of little business together, being street mercenaries. Game goes on, you get the opening cutscene. It's cute and all. I could see where you'd like to play this little bit of Jackie and V really kind of establishing themselves as mercenaries and whatnot, but I understand why they showed it in this kind of montage cutscene. It's to kind of get them established in the city's underworld, so that they, how to put it, it kind of establish you with the city's underworld and the different players within it, so you're known, but you're not really a tested element, if that makes sense. So basically, after the opening montage, you end up at the opening mission, which we've seen this a few different places. You know, we've seen it. You're going into that apartment building to save the woman in the bathtub, if anybody remembers that from any of the promotional material. So basically, yeah, again, it serves as an opening tutorial. Just, you know, how stealth works, how just some basic combat stuff at the very start of the game. You and Jackie return to V's apartment the next night, and then the next day the game kind of opens up and starts proper. So from here, you can either leave your apartment and go talk to Jackie, in which, it'll kind of kick off the main plot, or you can run around the opening area called Watson. Watson is kind of an industrial area of the game. It's run by Maelstrom, or not run by, but they're the main gang. The kind of these crazy, kind of picture the guys from, Mad Max Fury Road. The bad guys from that were all, shiny and chrome and all their crazy bullshit. Yeah, kind of imagine those guys, but with cybernetic implants. That's kind of Maelstrom. They're absolutely insane. It's kind of funny. But, so you're kind of let loose in Watson. You're contained in this one area, which is actually really funny, because I see a lot of parallels between the way that the story was told in The Witcher 3 compared to how the story's told in Cyberpunk 2077. Because they follow a very similar thing, because you're in Watson, so you can go do side missions, you can go run around and just explore this area, but you're blocked off from the rest of the city, similar to what White Orchard was for The Witcher 3, except Cyberpunk 2077 does things just a tad differently, as opposed to The Witcher, where you have all of these question marks dotting the landscape of random places to go and see. It's their bandit camps, or their places of power, or their little activities. Cyberpunk does it slightly differently. And I've seen a lot of people say, well, I don't understand how the main world works. Because, again, I don't think it's what people were expecting. I think they were expecting question marks to dot the landscape, and you go see all this different stuff. You see question marks on your map, but they're two different colors. There's blue and gold. Blue are little missions given to you by the Night City Police Department. They're little missions. Actually, you might get this after you talk to Jackie, because you talk to Jackie, you go to your Ripper dock, you get new optic implants, and you get the I can't remember what ballistics compensator in your hand, which gives you the bottom right screen. Which once you get this implant, you get the gun and ammo that you have, which interesting implant. But after you do that, the doc in your new implants gave you an NCPD scanner, so you can basically work as a subcontractor for the NCPD. And you also see bounties for the different targets that you see out in the world. Basically, almost everyone has a bounty. If you take them out after combat, you'll get a little bit of cash and street cred. Which street cred, basically, as you get higher street cred, you get access to more jobs, and you get access to more things in shops. It's an interesting kind of leveling system that works next to experience, which is just your typical leveling system. So either way, activities in the world, there are blue activities, which are basically, there's a few kinds. There's assaults in progress, which are just, you show up, you stop kill the little group of enemies that's there, and you get loot. They're basically like little bandit hideouts. You have larger, what are they called? Organized crime activities, which are basically little blue skulls, where you go, you fight through this group of enemies, you get the person causing, the main person causing problems, and again, you get some free loot. Basically, these are good for loot and experience. There's also another type that, again, it's just another variation of this. There's no real story to them, they're just loot and experience sort of points. And then you see the little gold question marks. Now, what the gold question marks are, they're gigs or jobs. So this game doesn't have just random locations out there. You can explore Night City and find chests of loot and everything out there to find, but if you follow these gold question marks, sometimes they're just like a little event that you'll see with a random character. Like I found one, it was a mission to help this little AI that lives inside a vending machine. It's the AI for the vending machine or whatever that you start talking to, and he's like, hey, can you move this dumpster? It's blocking my side of the street, So, okay, so you move the dumpster, and it's just this little cute little scene with a vending machine, and you kind of return to him throughout the game and, see what's up with him. I have had another one, I mentioned earlier, the one with the guy with the fire crotch, with the malfunctioning crotch implant. That one was a little gold question mark. It was a little job. And then there's one with a crazy street preacher that was outside of your Ripper dock. They're just little little scenes, little characters. Some are larger quests that kind of go on, quest chains that go on through the game. Some of them are just little one-offs. You never know. And then other ones, which I would argue are the vast majority of the little question marks, are job opportunities given to you by fixers. Fixers are basically contractors. If somebody goes to a fixer, asks them to line up a job, they connect the client to the mercenary who's going to do the job, and you basically then go complete the job. And again, kind of like the other quests, some are a little bit more involved. Some are just like a quick little stealth section in an area. Get in, get out, you're done. It's kind of interesting because I've seen people say, "Oh, well, it's just there aren't like large side missions. Like I don't feel like we're really affecting the world at large in this game," which I think is true, but I think that's kind of the point. I mean, really, what you get with a lot of tabletop games, you aren't really affecting the world. You play something like Cyberpunk, you play something like D&D or whatever. You're not changing the world. You're just a part of a story in a much larger world. Like really, because I think kind of it's like I mentioned earlier with Johnny saying never bring back dead soul. Never bring a dead soldier and show him what he fought for or whatever the exact quote was. It showed that Johnny did something big. He went and he bombed Arasaka Tower. Like he did this really big middle finger F you to the establishment and something, but nothing really changed. And that's kind of like what's going on with V. V's not out changing the world. He's just doing little gigs and just trying to make a living. It's really kind of interesting. The other thing that, like I said, I think that, I don't know, maybe my head canoning my way out of this. But I do think that, because a lot of missions that you have do actually have larger reaching impacts on characters and whatnot. It's just done differently from The Witcher. I think people were just expecting more of like what The Witcher did. But again, it's like I said, I think this game, it's like I said earlier, I think this game has as much role playing as you're willing to put into the game and get into character. It's like I said, it's interesting how it's done. There's one other thing that fixers do, and they will connect you. You can find cars out in the world. Basically a fixer will say, "Hey, I've got this vehicle." It'll have like a little backstory. I'm not sure if there's a car customization. I don't think there is. Just like there's not a driving skill in this game. It makes sense why there's not a driving skill in this game. But the cars are all interesting. They all have a unique style. It's just like I said, I would like to be able to customize them to drive differently, to maybe make some an off-roader, an on-roader, or, on-roader doesn't make any sense, but you get what I mean. It'd be a street car versus a rally car, or pick the paint jobs and whatnot. I would like something more like that, but the way the vehicle system works, it's fine. It's enjoyable. Anything else that I really want to say before I'm kind of remembering a whole bunch of other stuff that I didn't talk about. This game's got a lot of content to it, obviously. One other thing. Right, how the characters contact and talk to V. Because I mentioned how the quest system's a little different in this one, how it's more, there's blips on the map that show opportunities to kind of talk to a crazy character or find a mission, some large, some small. Because V has, just like every character, has basically a cell phone in their head. You don't, unlike, I think a lot of people were used to these long expanding quest chains that happened mission after mission after mission in The Witcher, but that's because really characters couldn't communicate over long distances without letters. In this game, you do a mission with a character like there's this character Judy. She edits brain dances. Brain dances are these basically people record them with their optics, and then she edits them to basically give people the emotions and the feelings and everything that you see, and then people relive the brain dances kind of like a video that plays in your head. Mostly they're used for pornographic material, let's be honest. Which I've also not seen a lot of in this game. I've not seen a lot of, I'd like brain dances to be more of a side content thing too, that I can, because you can buy them, but I'd like to see, can I go in and maybe I just haven't gotten this option yet. I don't know. I haven't played far enough in the game. that you can see these pornographic brain dances, or that you can see brain dances of other stuff just for fun, not just that are mission necessary. I don't know. That's just my own thing. What was I talking about? Fuck, I'm sorry, I got distracted. Right, Judy. So you meet her at the very beginning of the game. I'll talk about why you meet her or whatnot, but you need her for a special brain dance early on. So you meet her and Evelyn, who's this kind of the benefactor for this big job that you're pulling. Excuse me, sorry. Later on in the game, Evelyn's gone missing. Judy needs your help to find her. Okay, so you help Judy, you help find her. All right, fine. It kind of brings you on this quest chain. You find her, and then you leave, the apartment and whatnot. And then you kind of go about doing your thing after you find Evelyn, and you kind of reunite her and Judy. Okay, so then now you go off and you kind of go do your own thing for a little bit, and then Judy will call you back up later and say, hey, V, something happened. I'm not going to necessarily spoil it, but something happened. Okay, so then you have to go help deal with that situation, which there's not even any action in that scene when you go back and help her. It's just it's all dialogue. It's all just interacting with the character. It's really interesting. It's like I said, the quest chains don't. The game kind of pushes you to go off and do other stuff, not to kind of just focus on one quest chain at a time. It's kind of interesting how it does it. But again, I think it's more because all the characters can communicate long distance and instantaneously, unlike what they could do in The Witcher. But again, that's a theory of mine. That's just a whatever. I just wanted to bring that up. All right, I think that's all the. That's all the other stuff. I can finally hop back into the story. I'm sorry. I said I was going to handle one thing and I went off on a tangent. Again, there's a lot to talk about with this game, and I'm sure I'm forgetting stuff, but let's talk the story. So, back to the point, Jackie drops V off at the end of that big mission with the chick in the bath. You go to sleep, you wake up the next day. And, you go meet Jackie, you go to your Ripper doc, you get some new implants, and then Jackie tells you he's got the big one lined up. The job that's going to make them Night City legends. You go meet the big fixer, Dexter Deshawn, and he's got this job all set up. But to be able to, to go plan this big heist, you have to do two things. You have to, A, get a Flathead, which is this basically little drone robot dude from the crazy Maelstrom gang, and you also have to go see the benefactor for the job, Evelyn, and see Judy to see the special brain dance that'll give you intel on where this specific biochip that you're trying to find in this hotel penthouse. So, you go, you deal with Maelstrom, and then you go deal with Judy and everything, and then you go do the big heist, which I mentioned earlier how this kind of parallels very well with Cyberpunk 27, or with The Witcher 3, which again, I compared Watson to Whitechapel, or White Orchard, sorry, I keep doing that, to White Orchard in The Witcher 3, and also I wish Cyberpunk 2077 had kind of like a Gwent, or had some little mini card game, but sorry, side thought. So like I said, you're in this opening area, you have your opening mission, so kind of the heist is kind of like the Griffin in The Witcher 3. So in The Witcher 3, you go see the garrison commander for the Nilfgaardians, similar to Dexter Deshawn in Cyberpunk 2077. The garrison commander tells you, well, you need to find, he basically gives you the hints on, here's the herbalist you can go find to find the buckthorn to lure the Griffin, and here's this survivalist who will show you to the Griffin's Nest. Similar to finding the Flathead and finding Evelyn. Two very different kinds of missions that kind of show you how the world works, how everybody kind of interacts with each other. And then you hunt the Griffin, you complete the heist. Kind of an interesting little parallel there. Just throwing that one out there. How the opening act of Cyberpunk 2077 is very similar to how The Witcher 3 opens up, which I very much like that parallel. So then you complete the heist, you break into this hotel, everything's running swimmingly until the guy who you're robbing from, not Saburo Arasaka, I can't remember his name, I cannot remember his first name, shit, he's the son of the head of the Arasaka Corporation, He's basically stolen this biochip from Arasaka. The head of Arasaka shows up. Saburo, he shows up. He's, my son, why'd you do this? The kid kills the father, and then claims that somebody poisoned him, broke into the apartment, and killed him. V and Jackie try and run out with the chip, end up having to shoot their way out. Jackie ends up injured. The case that the chip's in ends up damaged. So Jackie ends up implanting the chip in his own head for the time being. V and Jackie trying to escape. They get to the getaway vehicle. Jackie ends up bleeding out in the back, sadly, and gives V the chip. There's some really sweet dialogue. My favorite thing, you can tap Jackie on the shoulder at the very end. Before you go to the final meeting with Deshaun, you can tap Jackie on the shoulder and, tell him it's something that Jackie's always saying, that they're going to make it to the major leagues. You can tap him, say, see you in the major leagues. It's this really great scene. So Jackie dies. V's got the chip in his head now to keep the thing from running, basically keep the chip from being destroyed. He goes, meets with Deshaun. Deshaun's like, what the fuck happened? How'd everything go this sideways? And ends up killing V as a... just because, there's too much heat getting brought down. And, so he's trying to wipe his hands of everything. So that's the end of Act 1. Very accelerated path. But honestly, up to this point, I had no issue with the story. Actually, I liked everything. Everything made sense. It worked. The next little bit, I think, is the biggest issue, and this is kind of where this is kind of the last little bit of thoughts I'll give on the story itself. So you see an interlude chapter where you get to see Johnny Silverhand. It's interesting. It's kind of the end of Silverhand's story and how he ended up in the chip and as the engram that you see throughout the game. So you the next little bit's kind of very sporadic because V's just been shot in the face. V's been killed basically and resurrected in a junkyard. So you'll see, you see Deshaun trying to pull V's body out of the wreckage. Finds him. He's leading an Arasaka kind of guard who ends up killing Deshaun. The guard picks up V. And like I said, everything's very choppy because V's very much in and out of it. But to me, I have an issue with the scene, and I'll talk a little bit more about it when I'm seeing the scene, in the commentated LP, because I haven't done that video yet. My issue with it just everything seems to be happening so fast, and it's so choppy and everything. It's very hard to understand what's going on. It seems like V's picking up information that us, the player, hasn't been given. It's just, I don't know. The scene is very, very coarse. It just doesn't work to me. It's not a bad scene because it leads into some pretty good scenes, but that scene specifically with V waking up in the junkyard after being shot in the head and everything, it just doesn't work too much for me. But then this former Arasaka guy takes V to his Ripper dock. They basically tell V, when you were shot in the head, you died. The biochip is basically keeping you alive and rewriting your personality, your thoughts and everything with that of Johnny Silverhand. So basically, V died, but the chip's keeping him alive, and you can't remove the chip or else V will, keel over. And basically, slowly V's consciousness is being rewritten with Johnny Silverhand. So that's kind of where I think the interesting thing with Johnny Silverhand is he's an ally, but how much can you trust him? Because he's kind of taking over the body. There's a really interesting moment after a certain mission in the game where you can start where he's trying to convince you to have a cigarette, which I'm thinking, is this a moment of Johnny slowly, like without V realizing it, trying to take over V's brain? It's just a weird little thought I had. But basically, at this point, you have Johnny and V having their first real meeting. You kind of see that Johnny can quickly take over V's body. It's a really interesting scene. You kind of have the whole exposition layout of your Ripper doc knowing that Johnny is inside of V, telling V what's going on and all this. Do I think it's a little too on the nose? Yeah, but I kind of like how they're setting up the main plot and what's going on. And then V, basically, after everything, gets up and is going to go to work and try and figure out how to save his life. his or her life. And that's really when Act 2 starts and the game really opens up, because this is where you have access to the map as a whole. And like I said, the game just really kind of opens up to you. So there you go. I kind of rambled my way through the opening bit of the plot. Bits, some story beats I liked, story beats I didn't. All in all, like I said, I think so far, I think the story's good. I'm curious to see where it goes. I'm liking the gameplay. I'm liking a lot of the role-playing elements that like I said, I think are a lot more complex than I think people are giving them credit for. I guess you could see where, I can definitely see where they would be confusing or they'd be a little frustrating, but I think once you figure them out, they're really cool. And like I said, I think there's some criticism to be made that it's a little esoteric, but at the same time, it's a really neat system when you dig into it. Just all in all, I think the game's an 8. I think it's rough around the edges, and I think if CD Projekt Red fixes a lot of the crashing, that fixes a lot of the graphical issues, which I think they're working on. I think they're working on fixing a lot of this stuff. I think this game can easily be a 9 out of 10. At the end of the day, at least for me. So I don't know. Tell me what you think. Do you think I'm being too nice to CD Projekt Red, that they deserve more criticism than I'm giving them, or are you kind of with me where yeah, they deserve criticism, they screwed up, but at least it seems like they're trying to fix it? And how much of it was situational and not necessarily that they just didn't give a shit? I think it was mostly situational. That's just me, though. So, like I said, tell me if you're playing the game or what you've seen. Like, do you agree, disagree, whatever? I'm always happy to hear what you guys think about this. I gotta go eat some lunch because this video ended up being a lot longer than I thought. I rambled a lot, and I'm sorry about that, but God, this game is really kind of interesting. Thanks for watching, guys. Check the LPs and all that. So I'm doing 2 right now for Cyberpunk 2077. I'm also going to be doing a 3rd down the road. Yeah, that's really all I got. Like, comment, not already, please subscribe to the channel. Social media is in the description. As I said at the beginning, I hope you all had happy holidays and everything, and Happy New Year. And yeah, as 2021 rolls around, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. Working. Doing the channel and everything. Second verse, same as the first. Granted, it's not the first year of the channel. You get what I mean. Thank you all so much for watching. Thanks for really a great 2020, if I don't say it any other time. And here's to a great 2021. And until next time, guys, I'm out.